Right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to The Solution. I'm your host, Joe Lake, and I have a special couple on hand with us today, Pastor Kevin and Sultana Jones. And we are excited to have them here. They're not only reaching the state of Virginia, they're reaching the country of Bangladesh. And you are going to be motivated, you are going to be encouraged that God is moving. We're in a dark world today, all kinds of stuff going on. But this is just one example today of God's light shining to people who love Him and want to bring glory to Him. So let's get started.
Yes.
Let's start with Pastor Kevin. Where did you grow up?
Well, I was raised in Southeast D.C., around the Texas Avenue, Hilltop Terrace area there. And those who know the area, all I have to do is say shrimp up, and they'll know exactly what that is.
Shrimp Boat.
Shrimp boat.
Okay, shrimp boat. Okay.
And born from Freedom, I was born in Freedom Hospital, which became Washington Hospital Center, and raised in the Benton Heights area. That's where I was raised.
Okay. So then, how about you?
Well, I was born in Washington, D.C. And because there's only a certain hospital you're allowed to be born in at that time. And then I was raised in Virginia.
So you guys are pretty close by then, actually.
Well, he was a city boy.
Okay.
And I was a country girl. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so city meets country.
City meets country and wins.
So Sultana, I'll start with you. Were you raised in a Christian home?
No.
Okay.
I was actually a foster child at the age of 5. I was raised in a house where there was a lot of drinking. My mother was drinking, and she had parties all the time. And then there was an abuse with me, so I was sexually abused
Okay.
by my mother's boyfriend. So they took me out at the age of 5 and put me in a children's home in Richmond.
Okay.
And I was there for a while. That was a hard road because it was before the mixing of the races.
Right.
And so it was really it was rough.
I can't even imagine.
It was,
I can't imagine.
yeah, it was pretty hard. It was pretty hard as a child. First day at age of 5, I was locked up in the jail room because I was crying for my mother. And then I promised them I wouldn't cry anymore, and I didn't for a long time.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when did you learn about Jesus?
Well, I first experienced him when I was 7.
Okay.
And I didn't know who he was. I didn't know what that was. I was sitting on a hill. My mother had promised to see me, but she never came. You know how that is. And I was weeping. I was sitting there sad, upset. And that is when all of a sudden I felt this presence sitting next to me. And it was like an arm reached around me and pulled me in. And I felt like I was being held, like someone was holding me. And I was 7 years old, and that was the beginning of me knowing his presence.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
Father to the fatherless, right?
Yeah.
Ooh.
And I went through several foster homes. I was in a lot of white foster homes. And then I'd wake up the next day in another foster home, or the next week in another foster home. And till I was 14, and then I was sent to a children's home at the age of 14.
Okay.
And that's when I was able to write a letter to my mother, my biological mother, and I hid it inside my clothes. So when we went out on an outing, I would take the letter and put it in the mailbox. Because other than that you weren't allowed to, they had to read everything that you wrote.
So was that a healing process? Were you just writing the letter?
Well, it was kind of a wish that I would get in touch with her, because
Okay.
I didn't know. And I didn't even know how I must have remembered the address, but I don't remember too much more.
Okay, okay.
But the healing process, when I became a Christian, actually, when I went to school, high school, it was then I was raised Catholic.
Okay.
So that was a big difference. I was
Me too.
raised Catholic, and he was a Baptist boy. And yeah, and so I was raised Catholic, and then I went to my church, and then I was promised to go to a friend's church, which was a Pentecostal church. And that was a true difference.
Catholic to Pentecostal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
That's a radical change, right?
That was huge.
Wow.
In the 80s.
That's in the 80s, wasn't it, you said?
Yep.
Okay. Hold that thought for a second. Let's go to Kevin. Were you raised in a Christian home?
I was raised in a Christian home. It was just part of my experience. I don't remember a time growing up when there was no belief or contact with God.
Okay.
God began to set me apart to Him very early. And I had experiences with God, which were many when I was young. But the most prolific came when I was probably in those teen years, maybe preteen years, somewhere in that stretch. I was listening to, during the Jesus movement, a lot of bands came out at that time. This was Sherman Andrews, who had sung with Andre Crouch at the time. I had one of his first solo albums. It was called Soon Coming. I went out to church that day early because everybody else was just behind. But I was dressed, so I got into the car. And I put on this album, this song written by Holland Rogers called Let Jesus Satisfy Your Soul. And I felt these ocean waves come of God's love that melted me down in my seat, and I just began to weep and to cry. But I had never experienced anything like that. I wasn't charismatic or Pentecostal, so I had no explanation. All I knew is this ocean waves of love came over me. By the time my family came out, okay, I tried to clean myself up and gather myself together, fix it up. I didn't want them to know that I was weeping and crying,
Right.
but I had no idea what that was. And here's the interesting thing, I had not received Christ yet.
Mm-hmm.
In a Christian home.
In a Christian.
In a Christian home.
Mhm.
That's a powerful testimony right there, right?
What's amazing is the things that God does to people who are not Christians yet, what He does to bring you there. I used to have conversations when I was in elementary school and kindergarten. God was my best friend. I talked to Him about everything. He was like a family member. It's like there was no such thing as not believing in God. That's like not believing in God, because it's like saying you don't believe in your mother, you don't believe in your father. That's how much of the landscape He was in my life. At least in my life. I can't speak for my other siblings. But as far as I know, I've always felt God in my life very truly, very deeply, even though I wasn't a Christian. It's just that God kept drawing me and kept speaking to me and kept setting me apart early. I definitely come from a musical family, but even in all of that we did musically, God always kept His hand on me. So I'm very thankful for my Christian background and my mother and my father, particularly my mom, that really established my faith. She was the first person I saw that was a Christian that I could see home.
And now how many people can say that? Right? Mom was the one. Took us to church. You know, all those kind of things.
Yes.
As you're sharing, I'm thinking about Jesus, the Samaritan, right? The woman caught in adultery, melted their hearts with love, like you're talking about. I really wasn't saved yet, wasn't a Christian, but that love, and that's what the world needs today, right?
Yeah.
That's what the world needs, real love. Okay, guys, let's talk about when you guys met. What were the circumstances?
Well, she has to kind of go first because I don't know this is going on, what she's experiencing. So, honey, go ahead.
Okay, so what happened was I eventually, ended up on the streets. I got into like all kinds of stuff, drinking and, sex before marriage. I was a wildcat,
Okay.
right? And so I got into all kinds of things, and I had tried everything to make myself feel good inside, to have that happiness, and try to take away a lot of the pain of growing up.
Right, right.
And we lived like totally different lives, you know. And so I was really on the streets, really, almost. And I was walking to this mall in Fairfax, Virginia, and it was called University Mall. And through Fairfax, there's this little path that I was walking in from the houses to the mall itself. So I was walking, and then I said, I must have said this sincerely, because then God intervened. Because I said, God, if something doesn't happen in my life today, I'm not going to be able to